Hello, everyone, and welcome to Effect House Office Hours, where we'll be answering all your questions about Effect House in the next 30 minutes. We welcome all technical and non-technical questions. But before I start, I usually like to ask some questions from you guys. So I just like to know where everyone's from. So maybe you could pop in where you're joining us from today, which country, which city, so that we have kind of an idea where you guys are coming from. Oh, welcome. Thank you. Hi, Haley. Hi. Oh, Game Plus 40. Yes, welcome. You're always here. I'm so excited to see you. Yeah. And today we're joined by August. So August is our interactive engineer. August, do you want to tell us what interactive engineer do on day-to-day basis?
Yeah, interactive engineers are some of the most versatile roles that we have. Essentially, I am half technical and half artist, so I'm probably one of the closest roles at the company to an external creator myself. So I do a lot of visual scripting these days. I particularly work with the templates and microjams, so I help try to bring inspiration and ideas to the external creator community through making these projects that you guys can reuse however you see fit.
That's so exciting. Which templates is your favorite?
That's a hard one. Randomizer 2D seems to be the most popular, and that was my first pitch of something we should make. So that I'm really happy with how successful that is. But my favorite one might just be the new photo booth template, just because it's really fun to mess with, and I can see a lot of really cool ideas coming from that if people start making their own assets and releasing new photo booth effects.
That's so great. Yes. We have Haley from the US, Bruno from Brazil, and Santiago. I would assume LATAM. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. But it's pretty late for Brazil, so thank you for joining us, Bruno. And Malaysia, yes. Okay. And in case, so you could start asking your questions now. Just pop them in the chat, and August here is at your service to answer all your questions. And in case you're unaware, we also have something called the forum, where you can ask technical questions, including the bugs, how to make certain effects, and you can suggest all your feature requests in the forum. So this, again, will allow other people to upvote it. So this will help us prioritize what feature to build for you next time. And you have asked to answer these questions, but again, we want you to be part of the forums. So if you see any question that you can answer, please share your expertise and answer those questions. And that will help us see which of you is the most expert, I guess. Yeah. Without further ado, let's see. Okay, Game Plus 40 has many questions. I'm waiting for it. If you have you guys checked out our templates? If you let us know which template you've actually built an effect with. We would love to know. And before our office hour, we collected some questions. There's one here from Yusuf on our forum. He's asking about the one-person quiz template. So he's looking to display a different results based on the user score. If they score 50, I want to show the score as well as the category medium. And if they score 80, I want to show the score along with the title legend. How would you do that, August?
Well, let's take a look at the template. Hey, look, who's there? It's me. Yeah, I think that was the first one that we started using myself since there were no head tilt previews. So yeah, this one is actually created based on a microjam. We took the head tilt subgraph from that microjam and updated it and polished it a little more. So I like this template a lot. So let's see, game end logic. This is actually going to be where a lot of the post-game kind of things happen. So what happens here is as soon as the game starts, or restarts, there's a lot of reset logic in this one. This animated texture will play. And this animated texture, if I refresh, you can see it's the timer bar, the little red timer bar ticking down. So that is controlled by starting it here on this node, and then you can see on play end, when it finishes, that's where this game end logic happens. And the first thing that it does here is it resets some things in the update and transition to make sure that the player cannot answer any more questions. And then it goes into the end game or game end logic. In here, we just basically turn off some of these things like the questions, the right and left answers. We just turn all that stuff off, and then we change the size and position of the score. So yeah, this would be a great time to kind of you could directly in this subgraph, you could write some logic saying put some different item on, or you could maybe do something right before this subgraph is called. I would prefer to keep it inside this subgraph. So what you could do is just say score, and you could input the score so you have something to use, and then I would create a switch block and this, or a switch node, I guess, and you can put this score in, and you might want to do some extra math on your score if you do something other than the default, or you might want to do something other than the switch node, like just say like if it's greater than this value, do this, something like that. But either way, at the end of the day, if you use a switch node, you can plug this directly in here. So when the game ends, the last thing that it does is set visibility. Oops. Let's do a set visibility. So let's just say set visibility, and then just duplicate this for each of your scenarios. And you would just plug this in. So if your score is 0, it would show this item. If your score is 1, it would show this item. And in this default template, 0 represents 0, 1 represents 20, because the score increments in increments of 20. So one other thing you would do, just in case you have a different type of score, is you could say like greater than, and instead of going into this switch block, you could go into an if block, and you would say if pull the score in. If, oh no, it's so small. I should just zoom in a bit. Okay. If the score is greater than 0, so that's like the base statement, and then just kind of duplicate this, and then say, you know, if the score is greater than 50, do show something else. And you always put your false into the next if block until you get to the end. And then you'll do the same thing here, where you would connect each of the trues. So this is if it's greater than 0. But yeah, this is kind of the opposite way around, actually. You would want to use less than. If you do greater than, then it's always probably going to be greater than 0. So it's always just going to stop there. So you want to do the one that's less likely. So if it's less than 20, if your score is less than 20, then you would do this first one. And then you would say maybe if it's less than 50, do this next one. And you put it into little categories like that. And then you would follow this logic. So if you want to, you can take a screenshot of this while it's on the screen. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, August. That's this one.
Oh, this thing? Oh, I had my whole... Gotcha. Gives me a little more space.
Never knew you could do that. Thank you, August. That was very informative. So the next question is from Ko Kwan Hua, Game Plus 40. How would you add a float parameter to the visual script? He added one yesterday, but he couldn't edit the float parameter.
Oh, add a float parameter to visual scripting? Well, one thing you could do is in your variables panel, you see this little X in parentheses. This is where your variables are kept. If you're inside of a subgraph, when you open this, For instance, if we go inside of head tilt, you'll see there's subgraph variables. So here's the places where you create them. At the very bottom of this panel, it says add variable. You can add a variable there, and then it appears here. You can rename it whatever you want. But be sure to name them. It's so easy to just start leaving them as their default, and then you get too far along and everything's named a variable 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's so hard to read. So just remember to just give it a simple name, and you can always rename it later if you have a better name. And then here's where you'll get and set them. So by default, the type is number, and as you can tell, this is essentially a float. So get it there, set it there, and all the getters and setters, you've probably seen this, but they all look like this, where the set always has an input and an output of the value. And then the get is a nice little compact getter to fetch that value whenever you need it. I think that answers the question. Right?
Yes. August, do you mind turning on your screen? I think it's showing most of the time it's your face for the second question. Okay, great. Okay, so the next question is, can you share how to call up an action from a randomizer with the animation sequence node? So apparently it used to be very easy with the old animation sequence node since the index is within the same animation sequence node, but now Game Plus 4 is struggling with the new one. So to repeat the questions, can you share how to call out an action from a randomizer with the new animation sequence node?
Let's see what we got here. I think I follow, but maybe we can clarify just if this isn't exactly the same. So yeah, the randomizer has been through quite a few versions. The usage that I think you're talking about is the index here and on randomized finish. This should essentially, let's see. I'm trying to think of how we would visualize something without adding any assets. Maybe we'll just move something on the screen. Yeah, this is a skill in itself that I think everyone should try to develop. There's this idea of being able to debug by just like using the built-in pieces of the tool. So this is at 0, 0. Let's just set the position of it based on the index, and then we'll see that it's doing something. So on randomized finish, we'll just multiply this to something where we can actually see the value, and then we'll combine it to a vec2 so that we can put it into the position, and we'll just set the x, not the y. And then when the randomizer finishes, we should see it shift over by 50 times whichever one it landed on. We'll be able to see the index here and the position. Okay, I moved over by 50. So one other thing we can do is use the get. One important lesson to learn is this value that you see in the setter, that is not the actual value of the position. That's the value being input into the position. So that would be the value of the position if this set was called every single frame. But in a case like this where it's only set once, you don't want to trust this value here. You always want to check it on the getter with a peak node. And this is a way to see what the value truly is rather than what it would be if you set. So now we let the randomizer spin, and we'll just see if they match. And if not, it could be a bug. So basically what we're seeing here is the output of the randomized finish. It appears that it is setting when the index is 0. So that's interesting. because it seems like it's always 0, which is another interesting fact, because like the index is always changing while it's spinning. So something might be setting it to 0 right before it finishes. And this might be a bug because we've had to refactor, a couple times. But if it's a bug, we'll file that and get it fixed. Yeah, it seems like this index, at the moment that the randomize happens, something might have changed with some of these nodes where we need to kind of to it. Okay. So this index is coming from the animated texture. So that should always represent
For the animated texture player and index generator, what is random and what is shuffle, and what is the key for?
Oh, you mean on this node?
Yeah.
So the key, that's a new thing. I think that's just, I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to say for sure, but if we look in the documentation, execute the next node when the keyframe is played. Keyframe index of the animated texture. I think it might just be a way to define a variable so that you have like a keyframe. Like if you wanted something to happen at the exact middle of an animation, then this signal will tell you when it's on that, whenever it hits that middle frame of the animation. And I'm pretty sure about that. But yeah, just to get back to this issue, it seems like for some reason when we do this final signal, we are doing it right after we play, and it might be the case where, okay, there's a couple things connected to it. So yeah, it might just need to be refactored for the new nodes, but you can try this. And see if that. Yeah, so this will have to be something that we look into and fix. In the meantime, I would say if you can just, you could easily just do a workaround where you do wait for seconds.
And Thank you, Plus 40, for bringing that up. Now we know.
Great find.
Yeah.
We could connect that, and then this small amount of time will be enough that one extra frame happens. Or if you're interested, I can share one of my personal subgraphs in the Discord after this call. It's just wait for frames. Instead of waiting a certain number of seconds, you're waiting a certain number of frames. So that's pretty useful for cases like this, where you just want to wait one frame, no matter how fast or slow the effect is running. If it's very low FPS, then one frame is going to be a different amount of time than something running at a full 30 frames per second. So yeah, this should give you the correct output, as you can see. Yeah, great find. And here's the workaround. Just a wait for seconds with a very small amount of time on it in between your set.
Perfect. Thank you so much, August, for showing us that. Regarding, Santiago asked a question about any plan for particle system in the next release of EH. So at the moment, we're unable to share the exact timeline of the feature, but I'll note this feedback and then I'll deliver it to the team. So I know it doesn't answer your question, but hopefully that's okay for you. We'll let you know when that's ready. Regarding the previous question, August, I think your screen was off during the first question from Ko Kwan Hua. So the question about float parameter, do you mind going through that again? And then we could show it with the screen this time. I think we just have enough time for this as the last question.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so the float parameters, from what I was saying before, your variable panel comes up when you click this variable button with the X in parentheses. X classically is like the classic variable representation, so that you can remember it if you ever took algebra class and remember solving for X. So the variables here, you can just add them by pressing the add variable button at the bottom, and then always try to rename them. And then the type for a float value is going to be number. That's the selection there. And then you would click this little circle to get the get and set nodes added to your graph. The only other thing to mention is if you go into a subgraph, or if you are inside of a subgraph and you click the variable button, you'll see subgraph variables. And this is super useful because these variables will also duplicate if you duplicate the subgraph. So they'll be assigned only within that subgraph. So it's very useful in that sense. So you just do the same thing. And then this variable 2 here is directly connected to the randomizer subgraph and will save a value only within there. And then you can duplicate it, and the duplicated one will keep its own set of values. Yep, I think that's everything.
Yeah, I think that shows it all. We have a couple more questions from Haley and Santiago. Unfortunately, we're at time, which I hope this has been useful. And if we didn't get to answer your question, could you please put it on the forum on the community.effecthouse.com, and August or the rest of the team will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for being here, and we're sorry we came late, but hopefully this has been very useful. Thumbs up if you found this useful. Okay, thank you so much everyone for coming. Yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll can answer your questions next time. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you, August.
Cool.